This, believe it or not, is the geographic center of San Diego, a massive sand and gravel mine operating in the heart of Mission Valley. There are no condos here, no Nordstrom, no Starbucks, and no traffic. But as this quarry nears the end of its life cycle, the question becomes what to do with this site, this 230 acres of prime real estate stripped bare from nearly a century of mining. Neighbors, developers, politicians, and landowners care deeply about what happens here, and building consensus, as you'll see tonight, requires a lot of heavy lifting. The once rural farmland of Mission Valley has been consumed by development over time, leaving a retail and residential maze and all but obliterating the San Diego River. When the City Council voted to allow this zoning change in the 1950s, one opponent declared at the time, "Thus died planning in San Diego." Years later, legendary clean water activist Donna Fry was elected to the City Council to represent Mission Valley on a pro-green and slow-growth platform.
I would like to restore some real basic common sense.
And now, well into her second term, Fry is not shy about listing what the construction boom left out.
Mission Valley needs public parkland, which it does not have. We're working on that, but it lacks that. It needs a school. It needs a connection with the river, which it really doesn't have. We've sort of, the developers and the planning has sort of looked at a river as something that floods and something to ignore and something that's bad, something to channelize. It needs to be more walkable so that you don't take your life into your hands when you try and cross the street. I think if it had all that, I think that Mission Valley wouldn't be such a transient sort of population. And by that I mean that people move into Mission Valley and they stay there for a while and then they say, okay, now we're going to start a family or we're going to do, something else, and they get out of Mission Valley instead of saying, well, we've lived in Mission Valley, we're going to start a family and we're going to stay here.
Fry shares these concerns about the future of Mission Valley with her constituent, Pat Grant, one of several Grant cousins who together inherited 2 large plots of land in the valley. One property is here, 17 acres on the bank of the San Diego River. And the other is here, the 230-acre quarry bound by Friars Road and Interstate 805. The Grant family has mined this property since the 1930s, and from this site has come the sand and gravel used to build many of San Diego's landmarks. The Grants' connection to Mission Valley started with their grandparents, Franklin and Alta Grant, who settled here in the early 1900s. Franklin and Alta had 5 sons, and the story goes it was they who discovered that the land was full of rock and minerals. The family mining business followed, and as Alta had requested, the sons kept the property intact and fulfilled her wish for a family legacy.
She wanted her sons to take care of this property and make sure that her grandchildren would one day benefit from what her now deceased husband had put together. And all the time we grew up, we knew that our fathers met and agreed on what to do with the property that they were tasked to steward. If the property made some money, you had a mining agreement, and you got royalties for the product, so be it. But you better make sure her grandchildren inherit the property. So you can't sell it. You can't make off with it. You have to steward it.
When the last of the uncles died, the Grant cousins vowed that they too would keep the property together. But as nearly all of the sand and gravel had been extracted, they had to decide what should come next.
the little talks that we often had on the property about how it fits into the community. But just reflecting another house and another apartment, another office, that is so short-term and so short-sighted. It's not just that, it's also a canyon, or it could be. When we would stand on it, we could see a central canyon, we could see these things, and we would talk about it being a park and having a home with a park. And the more we talked, the more we had opportunities to talk, we just began to create a sense of what we would have, which is a community on a park.
Finding a developer who understood their vision for the family property was difficult.
They all told us how they could make us a lot of money. Highest and best use became an expression that we all became very familiar with. Just sign here and they'll let us know when the money's coming in. They didn't address community, they didn't address the valley, they didn't address the river, they didn't address anything.
Their first partner was the H.G. Fenton Company, a longtime developer in Mission Valley, but after a year or so, the Grants parted ways with Fenton.
And the interest of that company seems to be different than ours. They certainly seemed to understand how to turn it into a money-making project. It seemed really clear. They just did not seem to be able to address in a way that we felt confident that they felt the other long-term legacy issues would be addressed as eagerly as whether or not you made a lot of money.
After another round of interviews, the Grants selected Sudbury Properties, a family business run by the patriarch, Tom Sudbury.
When we sat down to talk with them, the first questions out of their mouth were, what do you see for the project? It wasn't, what return are you looking for? And it wasn't, what's your time frame? It was, what are you looking for? And we would tell them about, we're looking for a park, we're looking for schools, we're looking for senior housing, we want a mixed development of people of different incomes and different whatever. All our first meetings were nothing but those topics. Had nothing to do with, we all assumed that they knew how to make the money work, and they would tell us if we were crazy, and they never told us we were crazy. They said, those are all really important, and San Diego needs that, and Mission Valley can do it. And they embraced the dream.
The dream evolved into a mixed-use, environmentally sustainable infill development plan for the mining site called Quarry Falls.
We felt like we needed a conceptual plan to take to the public, because if you go to the public with a picture of a gravel site and say, what do you want us to do with this? Well, the people really don't understand how to even get started. So you have to start with some kind of a basic plan and say, here's some ideas and some things that we've thought about. And the architects sit down with things like transportation, sun angles, wind angles, topography.
The site's been designed really as to try to recreate the architect's vision. That was Carrier Johnson Architects, was to recreate, in a sense, the landform of maybe what was once here before all of the mining's taken place. And so we stair-stepped the site, and we're able to do that because of the mining operation.
The plan calls for some 5,000 new homes, along with recreation, civic, and retail centers, and a waterfall running through a large and inviting central park.
The park was designed as a central organizing feature for the entire community, with pedestrian trails and pedestrian-only paseos that come down from throughout the community, down through, we call them finger parks, down to the main park. But the central park will be not only for the citizens of Quarry Falls, but anybody else that lives in the surrounding community that want to come down and use it.
We are going to meet the park needs of the people that will be our neighbors. We're all planning to live there. Every one of us. We are planning to be a part of the community, because who wouldn't want to?
The housing will be a mix of apartments, condominiums, and single-family homes, all designed to be part of walkable neighborhoods where residents can interact with one another and allow the roots of community to grow.
Once we got